Welcome to It Starts Within, a podcast from Platinum Performance, where we'll dive into the health challenges faced by veterinarians and horse owners alike. Join us for inspiring stories about the latest advancements in equine care, treatments, and comebacks. You'll hear interviews with elite competitors, innovative researchers, and the veterinarians that devote their lives to horses and the humans that love them. At Platinum Performance, we know the power of nutrition starts within. Hello, everyone. I'm Jessie Bengoa, and thank you for joining me on the podcast. And today I have someone special to Platinum here with me. This girl is an old friend who I actually met years ago when she was a Platinum advisor in what seems like another lifetime, before she went on to meet the love of her life, travel the world, become a voice of leadership and influence, and do it all immersed deeply in the world of polo. So meet Meghan Gracida, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, Meg. Thank you for being here, my friend.
So happy to be here and so excited to talk with you about polo and all of this.
All the things. So we're going to dig into it all. Meghan has an amazing life that she has built because she's an amazing person, and you're going to get to know her and hear all about it firsthand. So now you should know, for a little context, that Meghan is the wife, the proud Mrs. Memo Gracida, whose list of accolades and world records in the sport of international polo is very lengthy, to say the least. Memo spent, Meg, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe he spent the longest stretch ranked at a 10-goal player of anyone in the world. Is that record still going? Or I know it was...
Almost. Now he's second to
Now,
Adolfo Cambiaso, but
well,
he was 21 years consecutively at 10 goals.
Okay, and Adolfo Cambiaso is no slouch for anyone who knows. So, and a really unfortunate looking guy as well, too.
Oh, very.
So, Memo knew the Queen of England personally. He set all these records. He won, nearly every major title and tournament of the sport that it has to offer, and did it all around the globe. But what I love about him, and anyone who really knows him, is he's a true horseman, and he loves the horse. And he's really this truly living, breathing, most interesting man in the world, is what I always describe him as. And I think I'm probably not the only one. So you would think that Meghan may be known in polo circles as Memo's wife, and certainly that is an honor to be certain. But
Very much.
Meghan has gone from someone who was around horses growing up, someone who was passionate about horses, about equine nutrition. But you certainly weren't a major equestrian, growing up. So you have gone from someone who was on the peripheral to someone who really deeply learned the sport of polo from the ground up. And you really took a vested interest in the big details, in the small details. And I feel like that is what has earned you so much respect in this industry, is that you're gritty and you've got this amazing way, this amazing air of leadership around you, where you don't speak to hear your own voice, but you have really put in the time and earned the credentials to really be somebody who's helping to shape, polo, and especially women's polo in the future. So she is Mrs. Meghan Gracida, but she has made a lasting mark herself, and she's become a passionate leader. You're a 5-goal player too,
Yes.
which is a big deal. And we're going to hear all about what that means, because I think a fraction of our audience knows a little bit about the sport, and a lot probably don't. So we're going to learn about polo. We're going to learn about Meg, and kind of hear the real deal behind the glamorous curtain of what a lot of people think this sport really is. So, Meg, I want to hear about you. You grew up in horse country, and obviously we're friends. I know a little bit about this, but I want to hear the story. And as I mentioned, you certainly weren't, an avid rider growing up. We grew up 30 minutes from each other, and where we live, is certainly horse country. So we're around them, but not everybody rides them all the time. So tell me about your entrance into this world. There's so much hype around polo right now, but as a longtime fan and follower of the sport, I'd love to hear how those early months and years were for you inside this new world, and what really got you so addicted to the sport, where you decided that not only was this going to be somewhere you were because you fell in love with Memo, but this was going to be something that you really hung your hat on because you loved it and you wanted to be a part of it. Talk to me about that.
So exactly as you said, we grew up in horse country, but I always loved horses. My aunt was a veterinarian, an equine vet, and then she transitioned to small animal. And she was my idol growing up, but we were never in a position for me to really dive into an equestrian sport. So I always loved, being around the animals, and they were always just, whether it was me helping my aunt groom or, prepare them, it was always therapeutic in a way to just be around them. It's a very grounding experience. So I've always loved horses. And it wasn't until but I've always been an athlete. I played volleyball in college, played pro beach volleyball, and those so I've always been an athlete. And I think that has kind of carried me to where I am today with being, the work ethic and the discipline that goes into any high level athlete has helped carry me through to where I am, and hopefully where I continue to go in polo. But so my aunt really is who I got the love of horses from. And she when I went to work for Platinum, she was actually very dear friends of Doug Herthel's. And she was kind of who I initially got a connection with through to Doug when I went to work for Platinum. And then Heather Matthews was a friend of mine. So that was kind of how I got with Platinum, which was, I still to this day, that was working at Platinum was just amazing. I loved it. It was my dream job, and ironically, it led me to my dream man, which I didn't even know was going to be this, polo star. Um, because in my eyes, he was just another wonderful human, which he very much is, a genuinely just a superb person. But anyway, so when I met Memo through Platinum, I had no writing background, none. I didn't know anything about polo. I knew it was four players using mallets, and similar to hockey or soccer or football as they call it in most of the world. But I didn't I didn't know who Memo was in the realm of polo. And he's such a genuinely kind person, a humble person, that when I met him, it wasn't until later on that I just we fell for each other. But um he's so passionate about horses, and I loved horses, but I was actually terrified of them. Terrified. I Memo and I were dating, and then a couple years in we married. And I even at that point, I loved the horses, but I wasn't riding. I wanted to ride, I wanted to learn, but I had a fear of the animals. We had gone on a trail ride once, and I had a little bit of an accident. So there was validity to where my fear came from. Um, but I think through my determination as a competitor in most realms of my life, I was so determined to get on a horse and really learn, because I was just enamored by the sport. It's just an incredible sport, and the culture behind it, and it's very familial. The Gracida family, polo isn't just a sport to the family, it's a lifestyle. um and so I finally, Memo very graciously bought me my first polo pony named Patito Feo, which actually means the ugly duckling in Spanish. And that was in 2016. And he bought me Patito Feo while I was actually recovering from cancer. And Memo was in Argentina, and he saw this beautiful gray gelding being played in some chuckers, which, for those who don't know, chuckers are essentially there are normally 6 chuckers in a polo match, and similar to football, for American football, there are quarters, or in soccer there are halves. So a chucker is a period of a polo match. So anyway, he was watching this beautiful gray horse play chuckers, and he was on the younger side. And anyway, that was Petito Feo. And I was home when we resided in Florida recovering. And he called me, and I had made this decision that, if I'm 30 years old and getting cancer, I am going to get over this. I'm going to get over this fear of horses because I want to, and because I live this. I want this. This is I want to enjoy horses with my husband and not be fearful. And Memo was very astute as to what sort of animal and horse I needed to, overcome that fear. So he purchased Petito Feo in Argentina, which happened to be a horse he had bred out of his two of his best horses. And Memo had actually gotten rid of him as a weanling because he was very crooked. So
It's the ugly
long,
duckling.
oh yes, long story longer. Memo sees, 4 years later, I should say, sees this beautiful balanced gray gelding. And lo and behold, that was Petito Feo. And a gentleman who Memo knew had taken Petito and started, breaking him and getting him turned into a polo pony. So Memo bought him as a 4-year-old, shipped him to Florida. And 2017, winter of 2017, Petito Feo arrived in Florida. And that was my first polo pony. And that is a horse that changed my life. He had personality. He was a horse that extremely smart, and aren't they all? But he would, when he was feeling good, he would get frisky and he would buck and kick out, but it wasn't dangerous. He wasn't trying to hurt you. But what, for someone who didn't know how to ride, that is a scary feeling when you're trying to stay in the middle and this horse is kicking but through that, Memo taught me how to ride and be one with the horse and in control of the animal. And so I formed this incredible bond with this horse, and that is the animal that I I credit Petito Feo for helping me learn to ride and get over the fear. And I also credit him for, where I am today, because he was a very special horse that got me from 0 goals in women's handicap to 4 goals in women's handicap. And yeah, so long story long, Memo and Petito Feo were the ones that really got me to where I am. So
And I love that even the great Memo Gracida sometimes doesn't nail it with thinking this horse is terrible conformation and ugly, and he ends up being this stunning gray horse.
beautiful
We have,
gray.
we have
Yeah.
pictures we took of you and Petito Feo, and
Yeah.
nobody would know that he did not start life as a total runner because
Right. Right.
so, Meg, tell us a little bit more about polo, just, as a brief lay of the land, because I've been a polo fan forever and I just think it's such an amazing game. And I always say, if you get the opportunity to watch a high goal polo match, I mean,
Yeah.
you kind of forget about every other sport out there because there is nothing more, I mean, adrenaline packed. You used the term you become one with the horse. I mean, the fact that players like and all of these amazingly talented polo players can play a game going 9-0 down this massive field,
Yeah.
bumping into each other, swinging mallets, going after this tiny little ball that's like the size of a baseball. Um, it's incredible to me to watch. And I mean, it is just like the sheer skill involved and the amount of horsemanship that has to take place in this sport to not just spend most of the time on the ground is amazing. But you mentioned that there's six checkers. Are they 7.5 minutes? Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay, so
7.5 minutes.
okay. And there's a team of four playing another team of four. So kind of give us a lay of the land of like, because there's a process to the numbers on your back, what that means in terms of your positions,
Yes.
and also the sheer amount of horseflesh that it takes to play one polo game is astounding. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that. So give us a glimpse of the sport.
Sure. So the a polo field is about 9 football fields, American football fields. So it's a very large surface that you're playing on. And each player, 1 through 4, is the number one is generally the most offensive player of the team. The number two is often uh, a workhorse for the team, creating space for players to either come through or working offensively. The number three is the quarterback. Memo is generally throughout his career has worn the number 3 jersey, and that's kind of the player making plays and lining up the team, and just like a quarterback does in American football. And the number 4 is a very defense oriented player. They are generally what we say in the back of the game, and they're controlling the defense and helping feed the ball offensively. um, in women's polo, I've played all 4 positions. Each one is unique in its own way. In mixed polo, which is when I play with men, I often am playing one or two, position 1 or 2. Um, Quite frequently, there is one amateur on the field. And the rest are professional players. In Argentina right now, this is the big season there. Um, and they have 40 goal polo. So all 4 players are as highly rated as possible. And so each player holds a handicap, and the handicap is the opposite of golf. Golf, you want to have the lowest handicap. Polo, you actually want to have the highest. So that goes from 0 to 10 goals. As you mentioned, Memo was 10 goals for 21 consecutive years, which there in the history of polo, I think there have been, I don't know the exact number, but less than 100 players to reach the 10 goal handicap. So 10 goals is just it's the best of the best, you know. And so polo is 4 players versus another 4 players, but each of those 4 players, each player on that field has a minimum of 6 horses. So you're talking a minimum of 24 horses per team in one game. And now more frequently, players take 10 to 12 horses. Argentina actually recently limited the number of horses you can actually bring to the field, which has never been something in the past that they've done. So
It's
the
amazing if anybody hasn't seen it. Like we live in polo country, right? In the San Ynez
yeah.
Valley, where platinum was founded and where platinum still is today.
Mhm.
Where Megan and Memo, we'll get to that too. I want to hear about your incredible facility out here. But we're lucky to be in this beautiful place that has, such a hub, for polo. And in the summertime, you will see these rigs going down the highway next to the ocean, pointed toward Summerland and Carpinteria, where the Polo Club is. And I don't think you've ever seen a larger trailer in your life. And there's like a convoy of them going down the highway. And that's just for one team,
Yeah.
hauling 40 horses down the highway for a match. And it's amazing. And to watch these players, what I think a lot of people don't realize is, I mean, these horses are going full speed
Full
for
speed.
that entire checker. So it requires, like you said, at a minimum 1 horse per checker, oftentimes more, because it's a lot it's a lot of cardio, we'll put it that way. And
Yeah.
you don't hit the ground when you change horses. It's amazing. I mean, you're hopping saddle to saddle and
Yeah.
then taking right back off again. It's wild.
Yeah. Which that was actually that maneuver, jumping horse to horse, was started by Memo and his brother Carlos.
Really? I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. But that is an interesting technique because your horse has to be very well behaved, which most are. But exactly, you're on horses that are going the speed of a racehorse, but doing maneuvers like a cutting or reining horse. So the equine athletes on the polo field, I would argue, are just the supreme equine athlete because, as I said, they're doing the stop and go of a cutting horse and the lateral movements of a reining horse, but they have to have the speed and the endurance of a thoroughbred, which most of what I play are thoroughbreds, um, which is a thoroughbred is a very special breed. It's a very sensitive breed, and it takes a certain level of horsemanship to understand a thoroughbred. They're not quite as forgiving as other horses.
Interesting. That is
Yeah,
interesting.
but exactly, when you're watching a polo game, you can feel, you've felt it. You sit there and you feel these horses going flat out down the field, and it is so exhilarating. But when you're playing, it's like you have all that, and it's such an adrenaline rush, and there's so much going on. You can't think of anything else.
You
It's a
down. I mean, does the rest of it just disappear and you're so
Yeah,
focused on what's going on?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting because and when do you feel like in your polo career you kind of took that turn from being more cautious, more afraid, more of a newbie
Mhm.
to really becoming one with that horse? And I feel like you guys don't think about it on the field. Like you are so in tune and capable in that saddle that
Yeah.
you're so after that ball that you're not even thinking about it. And your body is just in sync and in proper movement with that horse. That the
Yeah.
things that you're able to do on a polo field at speed, like hanging off the side of a horse swinging a mallet, is shocking to say the least. So when did you feel that transition kind of happen?
That's a great question. I would say I I am now a 5 goal women's handicap player, and I w basically, I would say that when I hit 3 goals in women's handicap, I started feeling that change.
Yeah.
But I'd also argue that the horsemanship side, is unending. Learning to be a better horseman just never stops. It's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
But as a player and having that where it becomes more instinct than having to think about it was probably when I went from 3 goals to 4 goals in women's handicap, and that's when it started changing. But I have to add that, I've been extremely fortunate to be on horses that are of the utmost quality when it comes to polo. Memo has done a fantastic job of providing me the appropriate horse flesh to really help me grow within the sport because really horses are 95% of it. Um, a good horse makes a great player even greater, and a bad horse makes even a great player a lesser player. So the horses, they are the most important part of the game.
Yeah, I feel like in any equine discipline, and anyone who's not a
It
horse person doesn't quite fully
Right.
understand that
Yeah.
they're, most of them are team sports, it's you and a horse out there. And it most certainly takes a lot of skill on both of your parts to make it happen. So, and, having Memo is not just an athlete and a polo player, but what is so different about him and the much smaller group kind of at the top of this industry that helps shape polo is that they're breeders on top of it. And they have really made such a dramatic shift, change, influence, whatever you want to call it, in polo because they have literally changed the bloodlines that are making up this
Totally.
sport. And so they take so much pride, Adolfo Cambiaso being one of them too, and there's several others, but that take so much pride in the horses that they produce. And I know Memo, talks about his horses similarly to talking about his children or his wife. He's very proud of them. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of thought and a lot of care that goes into the breeding of these polo horses. And I think to people who don't necessarily have an inside look at the industry, they might think because of the sheer quantity of horses it takes that they may not be as important to their owners or their riders. And that would be the opposite of the truth.
R- e- e- Exactly. And I would say that most polo players treat their horses better than they treat themselves. I mean, polo ponies are, which is the case, I think, with any equestrian discipline, right? It's uh, the owners and caretakers of horses, they they value, there's a true value in the equestrian athlete that is unlike any other sort of partnership as you described. So yeah,
Yeah.
and they're even cloning polo ponies now, which is it's just taken off greatly in South America. In Argentina, that you're seeing a tremendous number of clones being played and produced, which is fascinating. It's a whole new realm
So
of horse breeding industry. So
wild. And it's happened. I mean, we all have watched, any fans of rodeo have watched Mary Walker, and, Latte, her famous horse, was cloned. And the clones are exactly that. And you look at them and you're like, that is wild. I mean, it is like watching the exact horse, reincarnated or whatever. They're all still around, but like, it's a carbon copy is exactly what it
yeah,
is, from a science
yeah,
perspective. And they sure look it and they sure have the same movements in a lot of ways. It's amazing.
totally,
So
totally.
science is a fascinating thing, ever evolving. But, you know,
Yes.
one thing I want to hear about and learn from you is, we mentioned it briefly, which is a lot of people who follow polo at a surface level see, this upcoming documentary about the
Mm,
glitz and the glamour of the sport. It's the sport of kings, and they see a certain image. It's this outward perception of what the sport is, but is it really? And as an insider, tell us about the real deal and the real people and the horses and the travel and the families and the grooms and the players. And I mean,
yeah,
it truly takes a village. And I feel like it's this entire world in and of itself.
it
And
is
the
very.
actuality, like the actuality behind what's known of this sport, um, it's different than what the perception is. So take us through that.
Yeah. So, I the thing that I find so fascinating is, take Memo. He has played with his father, he has played with his uncles, he has played now with his wife, he's played with his son, his nephews. So truly, there are families. You mentioned the Cambiaso family. They, same thing. Adolfo is playing in the finals of the Argentine Open, the greatest tournament in polo. He plays the finals this Sunday with his son. So the family aspect is just so special on the in within polo. And so many families, it's, as you're mentioning, it's not just the sport. There's a whole dynasty behind many of the families. But more than that, there's a dynasty between the organization side of it. There's the grooms that take care of the horses. I mean, we have a gentleman who's worked for us for 30 years, and he is just, he's like a horse whisperer. He knows how to take care of the horse's legs. He knows exactly which medicines are needed if a horse is injured. He's a guru when it comes to caring for the animals. And for us, he's family, right? We look at him as family, and he'll retire with us, which is what we want. So there's this whole community in the barn, on the field with family, off the field with family, and the beauty of polo is you will have two teams play a flat out difficult match. It goes into double overtime, you know, tons on the line at stake for, going as hard as you can with your teammates and, pushing your horses to the limit and, seeing what your equine athletes truly are. And after that, one team wins, one team loses, but they get together and they have an asado, which is, a barbecue in Spanish. And everyone's invited. It's not just the VIP section of the event. It's everyone, the grooms, everyone, the field maintenance crews, everyone's invited and it's a family. So there is the glitz side of it, of course, when particularly when there's royals involved or famous models or anything like that. But the real side is that it is a family sport and it goes on for generations, and the family doesn't just include the family with the same last name. It includes those who are employees who are part of the organization off the field.
I
So, and that's what's beautiful
it,
about the sport.
it really is. And it's what's beautiful about the sport, and it's also what is just magic considering the amount of, we'll call it table talk that happens on the field, which you get a little glimpse of as they go running by, and you're like, wait, what was that they said? And it's like, thank God those people don't speak Spanish because they would
So true.
get a colorful view.
So
Okay.
true. So true.
Pretty funny. So,
Yeah.
no, I love that. And, I want to go back for a minute to Memo because, what's really interesting also is that he was such a high profile player for so many years, right? I mean, years and years. And this image of Polo was never out there, never complete without Memo and Carlos Gracida. It was
Right.
infinite pictures of them and their friend Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana and King, now King Charles. I mean, it's wild. It's imprinted in history. But
Yeah.
Memo has really made this incredible transition to, I mean, he still plays and he still
Yeah.
rides avidly, obviously, but he has taken such a personal interest and transitioned into a coach and into
Yes.
somebody who is not just crafting the next generation of polo ponies, but also of polo players. And he's got this way about him of explaining things, but doing so, I think, always with safety in mind. So you can see him have a gentle sternness, but he has a very thoughtful approach with people in general and as a coach. And so I kind of want to hear about, the program that you all have going on because you have really transitioned your lifestyle, your lives, your focus, into this. And you're here in the San Ynez Valley, back where you come from, and a place that Memo actually knows really well too, which is a place that brought you guys together. So talk to me about what you've created here in the San Ynez Valley, and what your vision and your dream is, because looking at it, you'd think it's complete, but it's not. You guys are always reaching for, something bigger, something more. So talk to me about that.
So I think that's something also very unique about Memo is his ability to continually recreate and evolve into something new. It's like he was Tingles for so long and at the top of the sport for so many years, and now he continues to figure out ways to reinvent himself, which I would say for many top athletes who are considered goats, that's a difficult thing because age is inevitable, right? Uh, so with Memo creating a polo club, La Herradura Polo Club here in San Ynez has been just a huge dream for him. I think it's been kind of the next step in his career. And we have three fields here at our club that we purchased in the end of 2017. And he has built this, you know, incredible facility for players from who have zero background in riding or polo can come and start and be in a safe learning environment to progress in the sport and learn the sport the correct way. And at the same time, he's hosting extremely competitive tournaments. So really our polo club has something for everyone. And I think his ability to coach has allowed him to be successful here at our new facility, because coaching, as you mentioned, his ability to coach is a very unique characteristic. Not everyone who is a great athlete is a great coach, right? So, and I really see him thriving. I mean, his greatest reward now is seeing other players progress that he has helped, and seeing horses progress that he has helped create. So I think he gets the same joy now from coaching and his horsemanship as he does from when he was playing high goal, at a very high level. So the club here really is a club for everyone, and we have as you know, a great environment. It's very there's a great sense of community, and we welcome everyone, as you know. So we really enjoy it, and we feel so blessed to be in an area of the world that you really can play polo here 12 months a year. Sure, you miss a few rainy days, God willing, and of course during the summer we have some heat waves, but this area of the world is just so special for equestrians. So
Really, we live
yeah.
in close to weather perfection as you can get. And
Yes.
the the facility is, I mean, the backdrop is the San Ynez Mountains. It's absolutely stunning. I mean, when you
Yeah.
have, and I've been lucky enough to be there a few times and get to really experience that atmosphere. And it is very familial. And that's a testament to who you and Memo really are, and your team that's there. You can feel it, and it's welcoming, and it's an amazing place to be. And it's a very non-threatening place to be, I can imagine, for those people who are wanting to learn a
Yeah.
sport. Can be
Yeah.
intimidating, because of all the things we've been talking about, it's a challenge. It takes a lot of athleticism in horses, but you
Yes.
have amazing horses, and this facility is stunning. And you've got all the barns and the whole facility, but to say you've got the 3 fields, I mean, like you said, those are 9 football fields each, stacked side by side. So it's a lot of acreage, and it's just in this absolutely tranquil, gorgeous place. And so I'm really happy for you guys, but also for all the people that you get to touch, through what you and Memo have created. So it's a very special thing, no doubt. And it is really all about the horses,
It is.
when it comes to Memo. And what I think is really cool is watching Memo's transition, into a coach and into a breeder. I feel like he's always been a breeder, but even more so passionately into
Yeah.
that. But I feel
Yeah.
like you made a transition too,
Yeah.
because we've talked about how you got into riding and how you got into polo. So you transitioned into polo, and then as you still compete actively, you've also kind of taken on this leadership role inside of women's polo. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that, because your transitions happened very quickly, Meg. I mean, Memo's had a 50-year
Yes.
career, but you've gotten a
Yeah.
lot done in less than a decade. So
Yeah.
tell me about that transition and how you found, we've heard about how you found this passion for the sport,
Hmm.
but you really have taken hold of women's polo and helped, transform this side of the industry into something that is the fastest growing demographic in polo, which I learned from you. Uh,
Yeah.
so talk to me about that and what's happening in women's polo and the things that you have ahead of you within the next,
Mm.
month to 3 months coming up.
Yeah. So women's polo is very near and dear to my heart. And as you mentioned, it is the fastest growing demographic of all polo associations worldwide. So there are now more women joining polo associations than men, which if 50 years ago, let's go back 50 years ago and think about what it looked like to be a woman in the sport of polo. Number one, you weren't allowed on the field. That's number one. And to have a woman on the polo field it just didn't happen. In fact, one of the first women to compete was Sue Sal Hale, and she used to tuck her hair into her helmet. She would duct tape her breasts. She would get onto the field at a full gallop, go to the throw in, start the chucker, gallop off the field so that no one would recognize her. And that went on for a while until the United States Polo Association finally allowed her to become not just a member of the association, but an active playing member. So from that point forward was really groundbreaking. And her daughter, Sunny Hale, went on to be the greatest women's player of all time. And she sadly passed away of breast cancer in 2017. So the sport of women's polo in the realm of in the polo world is very new, whereas polo has been around forever. But having women as polo players playing against only women is very new. And it has, very simply put, it is the most empowering experience I've ever had as a woman to get to play women's polo. Um, and I think that's because there's such a generation of us, since it is so new, we know how fortunate we are to get to play. So I've been, had the pleasure of being appointed the USPA women's committee chair. And through that, I've been able to help grow and continue to provide and build opportunities for women's players within the United States. And it's a position I hold I don't take it lightly. It's an honor. And I get to continue to see all these new players coming in the sport who my goal would be that those players don't even know that they weren't allowed, that they wouldn't have been allowed, 50 years ago to play, which 50 years is not very long ago. But so women's polo, we now have a women's handicap system. So women have their own handicap. Um, and, I very fortunately get to go play. I was hired to play in the U.S. Women's Open this year, which is in Florida, and that's essentially the Super Bowl of polo or for women in the United States. So the team I'm on will compete in the Women's Gold Cup and then followed by the Open. And it's a huge honor. It's a huge privilege to be able to compete in both of those tournaments. I can't wait, and it takes tremendous horse flesh to be at that level. Um, so I'm very excited, and as I said, women's polo it's not just that it's taking off, but it's also that it's allowing women to just have a place in the sport that is very new, and it is now truly a professional sport. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, it's morphing in a really interesting and positive direction. No two
Yeah.
ways. And it's really exciting to have this whole other faction, coming up, which is women's polo, that is only going to add to the industry, and I think that's special. And it takes people like you to help shape that and push it into the future for the next generation as well.
Yeah.
And it's really a neat thing, and what's great is that you are going to be able to carve, your own legacy inside of polo as a Gracida, and that I just think that's really neat to be able to watch that, is that you've got your own mission inside of the sport, which is really cool. Um,
Thank you.
and it's an amazing place in Wellington, Florida, down where this
Yes.
place, it's another polo hub. And I think a lot of people on the outside looking in, when you talk about polo, they picture Pretty Woman, right? And they picture the giant hats and they picture the Ferraris and they picture all
Yeah.
things. And as you said, there is that part of it. We all like a good divot stomp and a glass
Oh
of
yeah.
both, but It is actually a lot more approachable than a lot of people give it credit for. So,
Definitely.
I know when we get to go down to the Polo and Racket Club by Montecito, it is actually pretty approachable, and it's
Yeah,
pretty to be able to be on the field and watch just this sheer athleticism, when you same as when you watch the tip top of any equestrian sport, but
yeah,
polo's it's different. It's got a really unique air to it. It's got incredible talent, and it's got such a generational feel to all of these families that have been in it for so long, and
so long. Yeah,
these players are each, carving their own way and their own path and their own story, and it's pretty amazing to see. So I'm really excited for you and for Memo. You've got such a history, the Gracida family, along with so many other great ones in this sport, has such a history, but you've got such a future too. And I think that's really amazing to see. And what you guys have created here is something special. No two ways about it. So
thank you.
platinum.
And I think mm, here in San Ynez at our polo club, it's the epitome of what polo is. And, we have Memo's daughter, Mishi, working for us, and she runs everything for the club as far as finances and operational aspects of the club. So you see her here. His son comes and plays here. His nephews, they play here. They live across the street. So the family aspect, you feel it. And I think that's the prime example of what polo really is, on top of the horses. So,
So, Meg, one more thought, that I would love to hear from you about is obviously we come from the world of nutrition, right?
yes.
How do you take care of this amount of horses and pay attention to these details like you and Memo do and your team does? I mean, most of us have a handful, if not less, of horses to
Yeah.
take care of, and that's enough, let
Yeah.
alone the sheer volume we're talking about in your world. So, how does your program work like that, and how are you paying attention to those details? And share a little insight if you would, or give us a glimpse.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because um, the number of horses at some points of the year, we have 300 horses, over 300 horses on site. And that's a huge number of horses, but right now is kind of, we're getting working back up into our winter season here in San Ynez. But why don't we use Florida as an example? We just shipped a ton of horses there. So we're going to have around 30 head of horses. And we have 5 grooms taking care of those horses. So that's per person about 6 horses per employee. And those horses get fed the best forage we can get. Um, they get, we love to have our horses living both in stalls and oftentimes outside. That we find that horses do extremely well grazing. That's just a natural, relaxing environment for them. So depending on what the horse is doing at various times, we'll have them inside or out, but they are always fed the top quality, whether it's timothy, alfalfa, orchard grass. It depends on the horse and again what it's doing. And these employees, they're constantly monitoring the animals, horses are 24/7. Certainly, we all sleep during the night, but there are nights where you do need to stay up if a horse, is getting a stomach ache and colicking a bit. We do everything we can to minimize those situations through our nutrition, and I'd argue that platinum is the number being able to feed platinum performance with a high quality forage diet is the best case scenario to give the horses, competing at the highest level, even if they're not competing, but being as healthy as they can be, which is just like you and me. Um, but the we feel platinum plus a forage diet is just the ultimate for our performance athletes, for our equine athletes. Um,
I love
so
usually
yeah,
most of our sponsored athletes or any of our clients or whoever, out there, I can always be, our team is amazing and the platinum advisors, but I can always be like, absolutely call me if you have any questions. But Meghan was a platinum advisor. So Meghan, call you if you have any questions. Okay. I can teach you
Yeah,
better.
I'm so grateful that I have the knowledge I do about the products of platinum because platinum has so many products that, some people don't always know what all platinum has. But, I remember being at platinum when gastric support came out. And I mean, we have ponies here on gastric support and they do phenomenal. I mean, it's a total game changer for them. So, yeah, we're very grateful to be able to have platinum as part of our feeding program. And I think that the polo ponies in Florida that are going to be on, let's call it the main stage, competing with and against the best polo ponies in the world, are going to shine because platinum sets them apart. And that's it's a going being this much better is a win or a loss at that level of polo. So
A really good point. The margin of victory is very small, and a lot of equestrian sports and polo being right there as well. But I love that, and we're just so proud to be involved and be a small part of the program that you both have built. And it's been a real pleasure to have been able to stand behind Memo for all these years. But how cool is it that we get to now stand behind Meghan Gracida and women's
thank
polo, support you in Florida. And I just think it's amazing because I think Memo is real cool and we're friends, but I think Meghan is real cool and it's and it's pretty great,
thank you.
from Platinum's perspective to be like, well, yeah, we're back in Meghan Gracida too. Uh, so it's a
Thank
pretty and you're going to do great things in Florida. Your team is going to do great things. It's going to be very exciting to see the
thank
horses do what they do best.
yeah.
And then see you back home again in San Ynez. So I really appreciate you joining me here today. I know you've got a ton going on, getting ready to go down to Florida, but thank you for taking the time to talk to me, to give us a little insight into, the real world of, professional polo, and what that looks like, and also into the world of women's polo. So thank you, my friend.
No, thank you. Such a pleasure. Always.
And to all of you listening, I certainly appreciate you joining us, as does Platinum. And I feel like it's such a gift to be able to learn from all these incredible writers together alongside you. So thank you for being a part of it. And until the next one, I hope you join me then. But until then, I'm Jessie Bengoa, and this is the It Starts Within podcast from Platinum Performance. Take care, all. Bye-bye.